Yeah, we will call the study session, okay, Jake, that's fine. Call the study session to order for January 12th, 2026. We have a presentation by John Pauly's class. What's the class, John?
Yeah, I can introduce.
Yeah, go ahead. Would you
I'll
introduce everybody, please?
So, I'm John Pauly. I'm a professor of philosophy at Simpson, and I teach a class. I'm also director of interdisciplinary studies. So, I teach this course called Critical Thinking in Systems, and this is the second time I've taught it. And these are honor students. And we spent the whole semester doing research on significant issues facing Indianola and Iowa, mainly Indianola and Warren County. These students, Ethan Drake, he's a first-year student he's a physics and mathematics major. Avery Plath, who is a senior and a biochemistry major. They did their research on the House File 718 and public funding and some of its implications for Indianola, Warren County, state of Iowa. That's the story.
So I saw the students, Bob and I saw the students present their program, which was about 40 minutes long at that time. I know you've condensed it a little bit, but don't feel like you have to rush through. I mean, contrary to what Jake told you at the beginning, I don't like long meetings, but at the same time, the other side is we are going to give you time to do your presentation. So go right ahead, have at it.
No, I have everything pulled up. So you can just go ahead.
As John Paul introduced, I'm Ethan Drake.
I'm Avery Plotty.
So this is our presentation on House File 718 and public funding. We're going to be analyzing the economic impact of House File 718 in the current tax landscape in Indianola. So just a little outline. We're going to analyze the current residential tax system in Indianola. We're going to analyze the economic impacts that House File 718 has had, and that's going to be a lot of Avery's presentation. Then we're going to look at reassessment as a form of revenue, and then explore alternative tax systems. So the current property tax system, you might see some familiar graphics here, is a levy-based system. So we see that each tax dollar collected, we have 33% of that goes to the City of Indianola's general fund levy. The City of Indianola then distributes that to different departments or entities. So we have the Police Fund, the Parks and Rec Administration, the Ambulance Fund, the Library Fund, and et cetera. The levy system and rollback. So each house, and this presentation is mostly surrounding residential. There's similar but different rates for commercial housing or property. Each residential property has an assessed value based on the property's current market value. Then we have a statewide rollback rate of 47.43%, at least for this fiscal year. And then this is the taxable value of the property. Then we have a levy that is applied to that taxable value. In the current proposed levy rate, as of December, was $7.86 per $1,000 of taxable value. Just a little background on House File 718. It was a tax reform bill passed in 2023 with the intent of lowering property taxes for Iowa residents. It works by lowering the city levy rate to a maximum of $8.10 per $1,000 of taxable value, and the county levy rate to $3.50 per $1,000 of taxable value. Another big portion of this is that it also consolidates previously separate property tax levies into the adjusted city general fund levy. It's a mouthful. This is the city levy rate that is capped at the $8.10. Finally, it limits yearly growth in revenue collected by local city governments to 3%. If this limit is exceeded, then the levy cap is decreased further and further each year to meet the 3% maximum.
So did you look into what the things that went into the levies that were actually put into the 810 levy?
Yes, there are obviously, we still have separate ones like the employee benefit one. But when you look at it, we had separate funds for libraries, which Avery's going to go a lot more into. This is just broad. And the biggest thing is now we have all these entities are competing for funding that's even kept lower in the first place. And we're fighting growth each year that, I mean, in my opinion, I feel like doesn't really keep up with inflation.
So essentially what you're saying is that, and again, if I can just interrupt you for a second. So essentially what you're saying is that those levies which had their own levy rate, their own funds, so let's say it was 80-cent levy or a $1 levy or whatever, now has been rolled into the 810 levy, so that dollar goes away or whatever it is. And now then you are still capped at the 810, which then, to your next point is that that 810 has to drop every year. So not only do you lose the levy that you had for those individual things, but you also now are thrown into an adjusted levy, and that is further lowered then. Yep.
Yeah, and we'll go into it.
Yeah.
Might seem small, but when you're competing against police department funds or fire, emergency, all that stuff, it plays a lot into it. So here's just some of this is the cumulative levy amount. So with the implementation of House File 718, 2023, which is fiscal year 2025, if I'm correct, we see a big drop there. And then obviously from now on, we have to keep under the 3% growth rate minimum. So that's going to decrease that 810 value, and then we have the other levies applied onto it. Just as a property tax example, this is a kind of perfect, things aren't changing as they always do. So if we just have a house at $200,000, the property tax collected, or the cumulative city general levy, which is the levy plus all the other levies like the employee fund, we have calculated values based off of rates from the fiscal year 2023, 24, and 25. Things to point out is we had a major decrease in rollback percentage on a statewide level from 54%. So this is your assessed value, and they're taking 54% of that. Now that dropped down to 46, and we see almost a $200 drop in this example. Whereas, I mean, there was a slight increase in the rollback percentage, but lowering 1% on the levy rate only drops you down $81. And the big question is this is a perfect scenario where we don't have assessment rates changing. Is House File 718's effectiveness in lowering taxes for Iron residents? Like we can see that change was only $81 of the fiscal year, and we pointed out that the lowering the statewide rollback rate has a much bigger effect on property taxes, which House File 718 does not directly affect. So the financial strain and limited growth of cities and towns across Iowa call into question whether or not House File 718 might have actually improved Iowan residents' financial well-being, and has it lowered taxes at a disproportionate cost to the future and security of local communities. This is some of the cuts I'm sure all of you know. Indianola's ended its partnership with Catch Des Moines. It's reviewed its employee benefit fund, so there's a decrease in that from $3.98 to $3.85 per $1,000 of taxable value. We planning to dip into our reserves for this fiscal year. And then we've reevaluated tax distribution to several entities, including Kyakota, Indianola Public Library, and then the Wellness Campus. And then she's going to go into a lot more of those effects, specifically the library.
Hi, so this research was done by Morgan Christian. She is a sophomore at Simpson. Unfortunately, she could not be here tonight. She's on the women's basketball team and they had practice. So I'm just gonna kind of give an overview of her notes and her presentation. So as Ethan talked about, we're talking House File 718 and the impact on Iowa libraries. So our key changes were it eliminates the special library levies, which section off of funding for libraries specifically, and you couldn't move that money to anywhere else. It rolls 15 levies into one general levy, and then removes guaranteed and voter-approved library funding. 97 communities previously used the special library levies, so again, 97 communities no longer have that levy. Libraries now are competing for limited city funds, so they're competing with, previously they were competing with Kyakota, sidewalks, simple things like that. Cut risks were hours, which we'll see later on in the presentation, staffing, materials, and programs. Why it matters, you have a loss of local control. It reduces the ability to expand services and threatens statewide shared library systems. So challenges facing specifically Indianola's public library. So the current realities are students are increasingly seeking titles unavailable in schools. So there's been a lot of book bans or other reasons. There's been multiple reasons why students can't access books at the high school or middle school or elementary school due to state legislation, and they can go to the library to read those books. And unfortunately, with these cuts, those hours are limited, staffing, things like that. The strong school library cooperation, so programs, book clubs, story times are critical for certain students or all students, just it kind of depends on the person. And then There were a lot of budget cuts that were made, so staffing, as I said, fewer hours. They don't have any services on Sunday. Book purchases decreased to about 42%. Ebook purchases decreased to 75%. Special collections decreased to about 40%. And then professional development decreased to about 67%. And so professional development is for the workers at the library to go to workshops and discourses to learn more how to implement programs or implement new programs. And then maintenance and upkeep decreased about 46%. So if something happens at the library, it might get pushed aside, or if something needs to be upkept, like something broke, it might take a little longer than it used to. The community may want lower taxes but expect full services, and that can't be feasible with House File 718. And then it creates a long-term pressure for sustaining library services. And then why libraries matter more than ever. So libraries play a huge role in community infrastructure. They have free access to knowledge, technology, and lifelong learning. They provide critical civic services, so voter registration, citizenship help, language learning, and provide a safe and public space for all ages. Agents of Conclusions and Change, they support the marginalized or at-risk communities. They offer programs shaped by community voices and fight misinformation and promote digital literacy. Beyond the books, they provide technology help, maker spaces and workshops, community publishing, and local storytelling, programming that builds belonging and opportunity, and then fighting restrictions. So going back with that, the book bans, I believe Of Mice and Men and To Kill a Mockingbird are no longer allowed in public schools due to state legislation. And so those books are still provided at the library, but again, with limited hours, students might not find those books. And then a compounding reality is as expectations rise and resources shrink, libraries carry an even heavier social role without proportional funding. So Morgan provided the calendar for Indianola Public Library's schedule. As you can see, it's color-coded. There's multiple different programs, reading times, storytelling. There's a lot of programs that are provided. As you can see, they've limited their hours are, I believe, sorry, one second. The hours are 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, 10 to 5 on Friday and Saturday, and then now are closed on Sundays. They provide things like the Adventure Pass, which gives family access to the Blank Park Zoo and Science Center in Iowa. They have an interlibrary loan, so if the book isn't at Indianola Public Library, you can loan it at a different library using the Indianola Public Library. You can print, scan, fax, or get help with technology and use free notary services. Request homebound delivery for residents who can't make it in, and then even scheduling test proctoring if you're a student. So what you can do, your voice matters. The power of an email or a letter sends a message and is something. So you can send in an email to Congress, state legislators about restoring funding, dedicate the funding so cities can't divert that funding to anywhere else. Permanently fix the funding formula inside the property tax system, respect the original election so that no revotes can occur, and then submit a letter to the editor against book bans to your local newspaper. Or you can launch and sign a petition to stop current administration's attack on federal funding for libraries, halt book bans, and then respect the original elections so that no revotes are required.
Yeah, so those were some great examples, and I think it's important to emphasize the community that libraries have, not just like with their community, but there's a whole network. So if we're seeing impacts some places, like other places have to keep up, and House File 718 really just is hitting everyone. So we're going to then shift to assessments and property value. This is a big impact that I think has on a lot of people's property taxes, and is maybe the frustration why a lot of people still see that maybe their property taxes are still rising in some cases. So a majority of the impact on a resident's tax bills is the changes in the assessed value of the resident's properties. We know the Warren County Assessor's Office is in charge of performing valuations every 2 years in non-commercial residential. This valuation is reflective of its current market, but still, if you have the city of Indianola, which is under the not currently, but if it's under the 3% property tax revenue growth, your property taxes can still increase. And that's maybe not the case for here, but I mean, this is across Iowa. This is implemented. This leads to the problem. We have disproportionate effects of reevaluation. So lower to middle class homes are disproportionately affected. We're more likely to see more expensive homes are likely to be underassessed, while modest homes are more likely to be overassessed. And I know this is a problem. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. This is a big problem in the Western New York area. Some places rise in their housing values like a lot, and other places kind of turn the blind eye and they're kind of stayed the same. Lower to middle income areas often face higher rates of accelerated appreciation. Obviously, in some cases, this could be good, but when your income doesn't increase and you're still fighting these higher taxes, we see income stagnation, and individuals are having to pay a larger portion of what they make for their income in property taxes. And then we've seen housing prices since 2020 increase 40%, which is, I mean, just on the national level, it's a lot. So this leads us to kind of shift, like, what are alternative tax systems that don't really necessarily fall under the jurisdiction of the property assessors, which, as we know, is not a perfect system. So House File 718 has really just pointed out some of the problems that, you know, need to be addressed, and it's too easy to shift revenue streams or create money from here, and it limits, I mean, just local city governments, takes away control from that. There's a bigger problem with the tax system. So obviously we've had previous support to eliminate or significantly lower property taxes in return for more of an effective local sales tax option. Obviously in Indianola, we have a 1% local sales tax, but opting for a more effective one would increase that amount with the benefit of potentially eliminating property taxes. And this, I mean, some places might seem like a big deal, but it does come with some pros and cons. So eliminating property taxes is one thing, and you don't have those disproportionate effects of valuation. It's only really just what the market value of the house is. But I think the biggest thing is the tax burden is not solely on Indianola residents. So anyone who does their business here is now facing those, you know, taxes if they're going to reap the benefits of the community. I personally feel like they should also be paying those same taxes. And then it gives more power to Indianola residents. I mean, if you now have the choice, if you have a car that's maybe pretty expensive, that extra couple percentage gives you the choice. Do you want to spend on a new car? Maybe you can wait until some other time. It's really just the power of choice. There are some cons to this. Depending on how it's implemented, it can be a regressive tax system. So obviously, lower income individuals, when you have higher percentages of goods that they're buying, that's a larger portion of what they make. So one of the things that we've seen is that sales tax on essential goods and oftentimes not pre-made goods, this tax is removed, especially like diapers for babies and more of the essential goods. And this is just one example. There are many different tax systems. But ultimately, it comes down to we need to fund community programs. And they matter not just like paying taxes sucks sometimes, but it's for a good reason. Like, no one wants to do it. But because of House File 718, we've seen the Department of Parks and Recreation, Indianola Public Library will have to compete for funds from the city's adjusted city general fund levy. This means without adequate funding, we can't really reap the benefits that these programs give us. So we see here cities and towns without libraries have much lower literacy rates. We see a big benefit from local parks, mentally, social, and even physical health benefits. And then pool access has a significant impact on a child's ability to swim. Public pools are safer alternative natural bodies of water, which are associated with higher drowning rates. In my opinion, I would want to raise my kid in a place that they can read, their parks aren't run down, and they have the resources where they can learn to swim safely. Conclusion, House File 718, in an attempt to increase the financial well-being of Iowan residents, has been ineffective in its role and led to increased financial stress on local governments and municipalities. With the consolidation of revenue streams, vital community programs are forced to compete with funding from the adjusted city general fund levy fund. The problems with House File 718 point out the complex issues with the current property tax and property assessment system, and then cities and local governments should explore diverse revenue streams and alternative tax systems to decrease the tax burden on residents. Any open to questions?
So, because I know you guys condensed this down from what the mayor said. Did you guys call out like some of the things that, because I know you guys talked about Catch Des Moines, you know, and that cut, that like wasn't general fund and property tax related?
Yeah.
Or, okay. And did you guys talk to any state legislature members on why House File 718?
Yeah, I don't exactly think so. There was a larger portion to this project. We had
Sure.
4 separate topics as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we had reached out to any state legislators, but there is kind of a culmination of all the information that's out there.
Just because I was curious if you guys like looked at like budgets and spending versus revenues and what missing revenue was on that gap to see, like just from my conversations with some of them is the gaps were pretty large. So the missing revenue from House File 718 isn't causing the financial stress. So I was just curious if there was any like research
There was
in other areas, like in eastern Iowa is what I've heard too is
I
a
think
problem that we're looking at.
which I could be stand corrected. I mean, there's a bunch of, articles on like state legislation, but I want to say that we went into reserves for this last fiscal year
Right.
on the state level, and that was a big deal because it was, I don't know the figure, but it was a lot of money. So, yeah. Do you know if anyone else talked to state legislators?
I don't
How many
think
were,
so.
how many were on your team? Were it 5? Were there 5 on your team? 4? Just
4,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and our project kind of connects with, I mean, there was how many different topics? 5 that
5 or
expanded?
6, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had different groups and I remember seeing that.
Community infrastructure to, medical problems and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
So, if I may, and others can ask questions too. So personally, what did you learn about yourself in this project? And what did you learn about the greater community, which either is Indianola or the county or the state? Either both of you, what can you tell us?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily so myself, or, I mean, it is, because a lot of this was very hard to understand. There's I think, a real problem with, transparency from government on the state level, which obviously if you want to make things more transparent and you want to inform your residents, that costs a lot more money. So I think there's a problem there. It was very confusing, and that's why I think, like most of our project is to just inform, and it is up to other people to take action. So.
Yeah, kind of to go along with that, I focused mainly on public opinion and then I tied it into House File 718. So the Des Moines Register actually did a telephone survey and they surveyed about 800 people asking how they felt about House File 718, and not a lot of them were fully aware of what House File 718 was, but they gave a basic rundown and most of them heard lower property taxes, so they voted for it, but there was a section that talked about how some of that property taxes goes towards public school funding, and parents were still okay with dropping property taxes. And I just don't think there wasn't a lot put out about House File 718 and all the implications that go along with it. So
So it was hard for you to understand so to your point about public opinion, what do you think is the general public's ability then to?
I mean, you can go in and asking questions is your best bet to learn this information. Again, I looked at some of the information they were looking at, and
It sometimes it's just a mess of numbers, and I'm math and physics. I'm a big numbers guy, and it was a headache trying to pull through specific numbers and state level, and I'm even like looking at other counties. I will say, like, we've even looked at the Facebook page, the whatever complaint page, and there has been, I mean, you studies all around Iowa, people want lower taxes, but then continue to complain when services aren't met there. So it's.
Welcome to city
question.
government.
Yeah.
So you had a slide that showed $81, I think, on there somewhere, if I'm not mistaken on that. And when people look at the $81 and think that, gee, that's what my taxes decreased at, in some cases, I think a lot of folks don't realize that all of that goes into police, fire, 50-some% of that goes to fire and EMS. If you take that $81, which is what, roughly $40 or 40-some dollars, $42, $43 per household, and for that particular household, but every single household is different too, because all the assessments are different and everything else that goes along with that. It is very confusing, you're absolutely right.
And that's even in a perfect scenario, how the assessed value doesn't change. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at it, and that was something I noticed, because I wanted to look at the Beacon GIS systems.
Mhm.
It's kind of hard to scrape some information like off of there and do like full-on data analysis stuff, which is more what I'm used to doing. There's just so many like different factors. Like, I mean, one house's value increases and then the next. It's pretty hard to predict what's going to happen with your taxes. So even like $81 on the all sunshine and rainbow side, and then like worst case worse, like maybe even your property value increases. And then your property tax increases.
So rollback will drop another 2% next year. So to your point that you made in one of your things here, that's probably gonna be the
Yeah, it will have a biggest
biggest effect on us than what House File 718 will have. But in conjunction with both of those, that is a big difference, so.
So I have a question for you. So, you brought up local option sales tax, and that's been kind of some of the, how do you fill revenue, and do you guys think through your research, and maybe you guys didn't get down this path, that Iowa has the tourism to try to use local option sales tax to help offset property taxes? When I talk to people, that's kind of the concern I hear is like, we don't have the tourism to maybe offset it, which is why we're in the broken system that we're in now. Other places, you have obviously big cities and stuff like that, they can get a lot more of that money because they have, Des Moines is the capital. But even cities like Indianola, we have such a big dependency there and back. I know my professors, a lot of them commute from Des Moines to here. So there's differences in tax systems, but I think there is a lot of business done between Indianola and Des Moines, and that kind of system, I feel like should coincide and benefit where the actual business is being done. But yeah.
Any other questions for them? You guys did a great job.
Yeah. Not a question, but just a statement. You guys did a really good job. Actually, I have quite a few notes just with upcoming topics that you called out. And as someone that doesn't sit up here, it's nice to, hear from people that aren't sitting up here. And especially as you're from New York, you're not from here, which it's nice to hear the things that you're seeing coming into a very small town compared to where you're from, right? Yeah. So, it was a very well thought out presentation. So good job for you guys.
Thank you.
Are you from the city itself, New York City, or?
No, I'm from Buffalo, New York.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
All the snow then, okay.
yeah. So
And
it's
you gotta be a
it's fun.
Bills fan, so there you go.
You jumped through a table.
Not, but maybe in my future.
Okay. It's a fair question to ask.
Oh, it is absolutely, yeah,
Buffalo's a great area as long as you're there in the summer,
yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah, those 3 days are good.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's like gloomy and there's clouds that like never leave.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions for the two folks here? You guys did a great job. Thank you very much for your presentation.
So say, good job, you picked up on the things that we had to cut out of our budget, and those are the things people are complaining about, but they also want lower taxes, and we get it. It's not an easy decision, but we have to balance, or try to balance the budget.
Thank you guys for having us.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Happy New Year.
Thanks for your work.
We want to thank you for having us,
Can you just still hear listening?
having the opportunity.
Do you teach this class second semester as well, or is this just a once?
One semester class. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Love to do this.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
We are up then to the presentation regarding the pavement management program. I believe HR Green is on deck here, so gentlemen, oh, by the way, you did get a half an hour, by the way, so there.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you.
Got a few hard copies here, we'll certainly make electronic copies available.
I don't know if there's a second.
Yeah, I don't
You know,
know.
let's take them down that way, and yeah, we
Here
can.
we go. There's just left,
I
right?
can handle that, thank you.
I like her, I'll share.
I won't be able to write. Are these ours to keep?
Yes,
We write it.
sorry, I should have brought more,
Okay.
but yes, yes,
No, you're fine.
welcome to,
We can share.
yeah,
I'm a
pass those
laptop
around.
person, I can type, you're good.
So, good evening. My name is Caleb Jansen. I'm a project engineer here with HR Green. I have Corey Shannon here joining with me. He's a project manager out of our Des Moines office. And so today, just really wanted to kind of share the kind of results and findings we had from our pavement management study that was recently completed. So, I believe Jacob kind of hopped on midway through the project, and then Eric came on board to kind of get us across the finish line here. So we recently wrapped things up, so just wanted to kind of present at a high level kind of what our findings were, and just kind of tell you more about the project. So just kind of, I guess too, before I jump in, feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have any questions. Yeah, I'm happy to keep this as casual as possible. So really, what is pavement management? The slogan that's always used is we want to do the right treatment to the right pavement at the right time. In today's data-driven world, we want to make sure that we're using all of the tools and information available really to help maintain pavement specifically as best as possible. You know, as the presentation before us, we want to make the best use of scarce public funds. This isn't a unique problem, and so pavement management is really looking at, you know, how do we maximize every single dollar that's put towards roadway maintenance. And finally, we want to maximize pavement life. So we just come up with a bunch of different strategies and look at how the city has maintained pavements in the past to really kind of analyze and see, you know, what improvements can be made. So that kind of 6-bar pie chart, that just shows the different steps. I'm going to kind of hit at a high level kind of each of those just to kind of show you what was all involved with the project. The deliverables are kind of what you're seeing there. So we included just an analysis of the current pavement conditions, so where the network stands today. We did some scenario modeling using some pavement management analysis software. And then finally, we have our recommendations, and then we proposed a recommended 10-year capital improvement plan. So that is kind of our final deliverable that shows, you know, what's the most efficient way and what projects can be selected to, you know, kind of maximize those funding levels. Before we get into Indianola specifically, I have to kind of get into the weeds just a little bit, so bear with me. So this kind of chart here, this shows kind of the heart of pavement management. So the orange line shows how pavement deteriorates over time. For the first 10 to 15 years of its life, a pavement is going to maintain the kind of good condition it has. You're not going to see very many distresses show up. But eventually, that deterioration really starts to accelerate. And in there's a window kind of in the middle of its lifespan where a renovation treatment or rehabilitation becomes kind of prime. So think of things like asphalt overlays, large-scale patching projects. That's kind of the best time to execute one of those projects. If nothing is done, that pavement will just continue to deteriorate and to the point where really reconstruction is the only treatment available. Price-wise, it's about 4 to 5 times more expensive to reconstruct a roadway than to rehabilitate it. So thought of it another way, you can overlay 4 to 5 blocks of streets for the same cost that you can reconstruct one. So this project is all about how does the city kind of make those decisions between which roads to rehabilitate, which ones need reconstructed, and how to kind of properly allocate those funds. So to start the project, we took a look at the network in GIS. We pulled in some Iowa DOT data, and then from there, we're able to look at the existing conditions. So the state of Iowa is super fortunate to have the Iowa Pavement Management Program. That program started in 2013, and it's a partnership between Iowa State University and the DOT. And they basically saw the value in pavement management and started collecting automated distress data on all paved roads in the state. So they drive around a van that's outfitted with a bunch of sensors and cameras, and what they're able to do is calculate pavement condition indexes for every single paved street. So we get a number that basically ranks from 0 to 100
how good and good quality a street is. And so those kind of 3 pictures on the right are 3 examples that I pulled straight from Indianola. So you can see like from 80 to 100, that's a very good street. In the middle is the 40 to 60, the fair streets. Those streets, you know, are likely to have some patches. There's going to be some cracking. You're going to kind of notice that as you drive over it. But it's still going to be what we consider be a normal street. And then the very poor are those from 0 to 20. And these are, you know, the worst streets in the network, those that are probably beyond being able to be saved through patching or overlays, and really reconstruction's the only option. I don't expect you to kind of see these maps or kind of look at these specifically, but really this just kind of shows, you know, in that report, there's a bunch of maps that you can kind of dive in and see individual street levels. But just a couple stats I wanted to throw out. So 93% of the network is currently concrete, which is a very high level. So patching has historically been a really common treatment within the city. And then functional classification is just, for those that may not know, just a way that we divide up how we look at streets. So arterials are the most heavily traveled streets in the network. Collectors are kind of those in the middle. And then local streets are your typical residential streets. So getting into the latest results that we got from the Iowa Pavement Management Program, the latest average PCI within the city is currently a 59.6, and so that's right in the middle, or right into the fair condition category. Looking back since data collection started in 2013, we can see a noticeable decline in the average condition of the roadways within Indianola itself. So since 2013, it comes out to a loss of about 0.9 PCI per year is kind of what the city is losing. And so off to the right, you can kind of see the distribution of where those current pavements are. So there are a high, concentration of pavements in that very good condition that you can see. These are streets that are, have had recent projects, any new additions to the network, so any new development is included in there. But really the one thing that I really want to point out is kind of that second classification, that second peak in the poor streets. And so those streets in that category are really where the focus for the city is going to have to be moving forward. If nothing is done on those streets, they will continue to deteriorate before they can be reconstructed. And so really the focus of this pavement management plan is really kind of how do we address those streets kind of before they continue to deteriorate down that curve.
So you're talking, you can back that up a second, so you're talking about those that are in the orange? Yeah, the orange?
Exactly,
Okay.
Yep. So I would say, like, for a lot of cities, sometimes it's a little bit higher into the fair condition category. We do see kind of those 2 bumps quite often, and so this one definitely is kind of towards that poor condition. And so, we really want to make sure that those streets are getting attention.
So those would be the ones that, because we lose, they would deteriorate faster than the 0.09 that you're talking about. You're getting down to, and I was looking through this, it was pretty interesting to kind of note that, but you're looking at those maybe deteriorating instead of 0.09, you might be 2 or 0.2 or 0.3 every year
Exactly.
because they drop off so quickly.
Exactly, yep, right on.
I understood it correctly.
Yep, you got it. Okay. Couple more just stats that I'll point out. Again, these go into a lot more detail in the report, but functional classification, so collector streets are being maintained currently quite a bit below the arterial and local streets right now. Collectors are about 10 points lower than the arterials. Again, this is not an uncommon finding. A lot of times collectors will see, similar heavy traffic volumes to the arterials, but they don't quite get the same attention as kind of those major thoroughfares through town. And then, local streets are actually maintained similar to arterials. So in an ideal world, typically we'll see arterials should be maintained the best, followed by collector, and followed by local. That's typically what we find to be the best use of funds. Pavement type, again, the vast majority of the network is concrete, but you can see that the composite, so that's concrete on the bottom, asphalt on top, and just the pure asphalt have quite a bit lower condition than the concrete. So these are likely projects that were done 10, 15 years ago. They're now at the end of their service life, and so a lot of those streets are now in need of treatment once again as
So
well.
HMA is hot mix asphalt,
Yep, precisely, yep,
just for everybody's.
yep, thank you. Yep.
Could you explain the context of why you would focus on arterials, the safety aspect?
Yep, for sure. So arterials, because they're often heavily traveled, The speed limits are also a little bit higher on them typically, so for vehicles passing over them, you're gonna notice a rough arterial more than you'll notice a rough local street. In addition, when we look at like the benefit, comparing roads to roads, the arterials are often, they see the most traffic, and so those are kind of the most beneficial to keep in that good condition. So, is anything else to add there?
I think it's good when you have safety concerns because the conditions are not good for maintaining a good friction with the wheels or whatever it might be, or it could be just potholes. You're dealing with high velocities and the impact is gonna be higher to safety. You're gonna have more frequent accidents that are severe. Whereas a local street, you're gonna have lower velocities, it's gonna be more of just an inconvenience. I just don't like the way this feels, I don't like the way it looks, versus, wow, this is a hazard to life safety.
So I know those numbers are pretty arbitrary, is a 59.4 good, is it bad? This just kind of shows, I like to throw this chart in here because the state makes all this data available, we can look at city by city. And so I just picked kind of 10 jurisdictions within the state, some with similar size to Indianola, and then some just in the Des Moines metro area. The best scores in the state are always reserved for those rapidly growing cities. So your North Liberties, Waukees, Tiffins, as they're just like pumping the network full of brand new streets, that's where they can get those 80s. Kind of those, the more established communities are kind of those lower streets. So I think the statewide average is around a 61 at the moment. So Indianola's, just behind that. But really it doesn't mean that there's not more work to be done, even though Indianola is well within reach of kind of the statewide average there. Again, I didn't put this picture on here so you could read it, but kind of moving on from the existing conditions, we kind of move towards the analysis. And so the first step is to identify what treatments are available for the city of Indianola. This is similar to a lot of, we call it a toolbox of treatments. This is very similar to what we do for other communities. Really, we just want to see if there are any new treatments that the city hasn't used, and see what would be most effective. So we have 4 categories ranging from reconstruction, which is the full removal and replacement, major rehabs, which are what I would say they're a structural improvement. So typically it's like a 3-inch asphalt overlay or a large scale patching project. Minor rehabs are kind of those to either a smaller patching project, sometimes thin overlays can be included in that. And then the preservation activities, which are your routine pothole patching, crack sealing, treatments like that. And so what we,
If I can jump in.
definitely.
So with this, it's counterintuitive because what's on the bottom is ideally where you should be putting the money. Like, we just constructed a roadway and you think, wow, we're done with that for decades. Actually, you should be thinking of, we're gonna fund seal coating, because the 2 things that are most destructive to pavements in terms of asphalt and concrete, I think as well, but mostly asphalt, is the UV rays and water, and in that order. So we want to, it's like putting sunscreen on if you're worried about getting a burn. We want to have a nice coat because it breaks down the bituminous, we call it, it's the asphalt, it breaks that down and then you lose aggregate. And then you get water in and water gets friends to come party, and then we have a nice winter freeze and then it just starts making cracks. So now you've gone from, hey, this is a nice roadway, to, hey, we kind of lost the surface, now we got cracks.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of a tangent, but one thing that I always hear said is like, you can't reconstruct your way out of a problem. So if the city is just trying to wait until roads reach that point of needing reconstruction, that's gonna be the most expensive way to maintain the system. So like you said, really identifying those kind of lesser treatments ahead of time are critical.
I'm gonna go back, just to interrupt you for a second.
By all means.
And I've told staff this, and I've mentioned it to the council once or twice as well. When I was on the council the first time in 1994 or 95, we did an asphalt overlay on Iowa Street from B Street to G Street, or E Street, B to E. At that time, we were told that it would limit deterioration of the roadway for about 10 to maybe 12 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. they, being the council, in 2016, I believe it was, actually then tore that out and repaved it with concrete. That roadway with proper maintenance lasted well over 20 years. So just an FYI, to Eric's point, I think as long as you maintain those properly, I think you're gonna be fine. And it does work.
Caleb, I think a point worth making too is, of course, the financial considerations are always rising to the top, but when we also look at convenience factors, your overlays and those types of maintenance, they're much less disruptive to the community as a whole, right? They're much quicker turnaround times. The streets are closed for a shorter period. Sometimes they don't even have to do a full closure, whereas once you get into that reconstruction, you're redoing base and all those things, you're certainly seeing full street closures at that point, and you're certainly seeing longer turnaround times for those streets to be back online. And of course, that does provide inconvenience to our residents and particularly the schools as well, especially when we have at least one full year of school. There's not necessarily that summer reprieve where we can do construction around there.
How do you, and maybe I'm getting in the weeds here and I apologize for that. So let's say you've got an arterial that you want, or a road that, concrete road, it's in that fair to poor range, you're gonna make an overlay on it. But you've got some issues with a couple of portions with the concrete there that it's maybe sunk a little bit or some other issues. How do you handle that? Do you replace that portion and then just do the overlay, or how's that normally done?
It's a tough decision. I would say, yeah, this is probably going to be a non-answer, but it depends. That's what
Okay.
engineers love to always say. It depends. What we have come up with is we typically say for a patch job, you want to limit that to around 20% of a roadway surface.
Right.
Any more than that, and you start losing out your efficiencies.
Right.
And, I think just like looking through Street View for this project, there's a lot of kind of streets where it looks like, up to 50% of the roadway has been patched at one point or another. And then you kind of end up with a patchwork street. So, I think overlays are a possibility. If there's a few isolated panels, those are great to be patched and full depth replacement, but.
I know there's a few places where the manholes have either sunk or risen, or the roadway sunk and the manhole stayed in place. What do you do if you got that dip or that deviation, then in a very small area, that's patchable then? Is that what you're saying here?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Every case is
Everything's
probably
gonna be
unique,
different.
but,
Yeah, I
but
get
yeah, I think the more isolated the incidents, I would say even the more important it is to perform one of those kind of rehab treatments to kind of catch the problem, because those cracks do spread.
Right.
They will travel from panel to panel, and so if you can kind of isolate those ahead of time before the problem gets worse, that's always preferred.
Right.
So.
Caleb, can you explain a little bit about crack and seat for them? So that this is kind of a, I don't know, kind of state of the art kind of thing, but help them understand a little bit about what we can do on some of these that are problematic.
Yeah. So I would say probably the most substantial treatment that we have in the rehabilitations is a crack and seat. I think this treatment has been around for a little while, but essentially what you do is it's a concrete street, and there's a machine that basically comes and it cracks the concrete panel at set intervals. And what that does is it basically turns the rigid concrete into a more flexible surface, which can then be paved over with asphalt. And what that does is basically just creates a new sturdy base for the asphalt. So particularly among arterials and collectors, the ones that see the heavy traffic, that's a great treatment. There's multiple different ways to do it. Sometimes it requires, saw cutting along the curbs to kind of isolate the curbs. That's where the treatment can get a little bit more pricey, but really that's definitely kind of the big heavy hitter for rehabilitations, and can really, that's where you can start getting the 15 to 20 year lifespan additions on those treatments.
One of the concerns, though, you put a 3-inch asphalt overlay, how do you get the drainage on the streets, and how do you manage that? And the gutters area and those kinds of things?
I've seen it done multiple ways. A lot of times I've seen it kind of taper down at the curb. So it's kind of 3 inch in the center, and then kind of once you get to the gutter, you kind of keep it at that 1 inch level. I'm not sure, Corey, if you've seen that.
Yeah, you can also, Caleb mentioned saw cutting at the curb. You can also mill right next to that saw cut joint so that you can keep, at least maybe 1 to 2 inches out at that far edge. So there's some good ways in practice that those can be constructed.
Okay. Sorry, I kinda got in the weeds there.
Oh, no, I'm happy to talk about this stuff, but anything else before we move on?
Just one question, and it kind of goes back earlier in the presentation, but you talked about the state goes through every 2 years and does their, how old is this data for our streets? Is it 1 year old, 2 year old, or is it more recent?
This is from 2023 is the last year we have available. So there is a 1 year gap on between when the data is collected and when it becomes available just for their processing. I didn't put this in the presentation because it was a little in the weeds. The city or the state has transitioned to every 4 year data collection with the option for cities to opt in to every other. And so I believe the Des Moines MPO has paid for member cities to have that every other year collection. So I know, and I believe Indianola is an MPO or associate member.
Associate members.
Okay. So I believe that Indianola should be receiving data, as soon as later this year is when they would have updated data, but it was based on the 2023 collection, but that is accounted for in the model since
So,
that time.
I guess to go off of that, the orange streets are probably, some could be red at this point.
Possible. Yep, yep. We do, yeah, we factor in, like I said, we factor in that kind of deterioration in the model and everything, but, yeah, I think the maps at least show what it was in 2023, so. So kind of getting into the software itself, really the software is great at analyzing the pavement network as a whole. And really a big focus of that is starting to look at those different budget levels. And so the two main budget scenarios that we look at are the performance-based scenarios and the budget-based scenarios. So the performance-based scenarios, those ask the question, how much does it cost to reach a certain level? So if the city was to say, we want to maintain a 60, okay, great, how much does that cost? Budget-based scenarios kind of ask the same question, but in an inverse, if the city wants to spend X amount of dollars, what's going to happen to the roadways? And so jumping right in, so this is kind of the results of that second-based scenario, so that budget-based scenario. I'll kind of start at the bottom. So if the city were to spend zero money on roadway treatments, that's kind of that red do-nothing scenario. So you can see, obviously, all the streets would continue to deteriorate over time as that upkeep just isn't completed. And by the end of the 15-year scenario, we projected that the average PCI would be at like a 40. Going up from there, we can kind of look at those different budget levels and kind of see, based on, the different treatments that are completed, what can the city expect kind of those PCI values to trend over time. And so that next performance-based scenario, this kind of puts numbers to some of those values. So you can see if a target PCI was 60, we estimate that to cost around $3.1 million annually. We'd further break that down by functional classification, which is that chart on the right. So like I said in the beginning, 3/4 of the network is made up of local streets. So understandably, that takes up the vast majority of the budget. And what this allows us to do is kind of tweak some of our recommendations to see, how can we optimize that? And I think that's, or a couple slides from now, but just kind of fast forwarding. In the end, that's kind of our recommendation is to maintain the arterials and collectors at a higher performance level than the locals. And that really allows, even though you're kind of letting those locals maybe fall in condition a little bit, that really is going to still boost the network as a whole by kind of maintaining those most important streets at a higher level. Kind of before I get into those recommendations, just kind of wrapping up. So at the end is the recommended capital improvement plan. So this kind of takes those, the software is able to basically recommend the ideal projects based on a given budget. And so we assign the different projects based on their location, the recommended year, treatment category, and then we estimate costs for that as well. I want to say that this is not meant to be the end-all be-all. Each project still needs audited. This is more to kind of serve as a guide for city staff as they kind of make their annual project recommendations and start to look at, which streets. And so really this just kind of shows, what can the city reasonably achieve with a given budget and kind of what should the targeted streets be. And so, yeah, kind of last slide here, looking at the recommendations. So talked through some of these with Eric for a little bit. We basically came up with kind of, there's, 3 primary courses of action. One is do nothing, and that's kind of your patching streets as a stopgap, and you're focusing on reconstruction only. This is where, you wait for a road to deteriorate all the way, reconstruct it, and that is gonna be an expensive endeavor. So the second is more of a compromise. This is where the city will be able to focus more on that rehabilitation work, start to target those orange core streets kind of before they deteriorate, and really work on improving those arterials and collectors. So right now the locals are in that pretty good condition, so really kind of that would focus more on those arterial and collector roadways. And then kind of the third one is more of an ambitious goal. We can set a goal to raise the overall PCI, increasing both budgets for rehabilitations and reconstructions. And so after talking through it, our final recommendations were to maintain the arterials at 65, collectors at 60, and then local streets at a 55. That's estimated to cost around $2.75 million, which is a notable increase from what's currently spent now. And then kind of the other kind of recommendation is to typically budget around 40 to 50% of an annual budget for reconstruction. Keep those rehabilitations of at least half of an annual budget, and then focus on those restoration activities at around 5%. And so that's kind of where we kind of left the project off. So I guess open it up for any questions or comments from anyone else.
For Eric, how do you feel we've been using our RUDF money in terms of actually fixing our roads? Do you feel we've been doing an adequate job, inadequate job? And what do you foresee our roads looking like down the road? Because I'm looking at you to fix my roads, man.
You're trying to, that's good. This is to pin me down. So I think that it depends. This is the engineering response. It depends on your perspective. So one perspective is we're just going to fight the hottest fires. We're going to go after the worst roads and we're going to improve those. And I think, I'm not exactly sure how the mix has been, but it seems like you've been doing a really good job of reconstructing, like major efforts. And that's a good thing to do. But then if you're going to invest money there, then you need to look at maintaining those. It's counterintuitive. Someone the citizenry may say, why are you spending money to maintain roads you just constructed? Well, with concrete, it's a little more challenging. We might have to figure out what to do with that, but you want to spend money where you've already invested money. So you have a nice vehicle. I don't drive a nice vehicle, but if you do drive a nice vehicle, you want to polish it, you want to make sure that you get a ding, that you take care of it, you put some paint in that so it doesn't oxidize, rust out. And I think that's what we need to do with our roads. I think you've done a good job with reconstructing the bigger efforts, the things that are just more exciting to the public. Unfortunately, the other things, when you get these overlays, people could look at it and say that road's not that great and you're just slopping down a surface. Well, yes, it's in that marginal category where we're doing an overlay of a few inches or whatever it might be. So I don't want to disparage you, us, really, I'm in this now too, but I think it's just, it's a methodology. So the methodology where I subscribe is I consider water to be the enemy. First of all, it's the UV rays, so I want to have a nice surface coverage, especially on asphaltic material. And then I want to make sure that we take care of drainage problems. If I get water into the surface, that's really bad. If it gets below and into the basin, the subgrade below that, super bad. That means I'm losing material because water parties. It's always going to party. Polar molecule, it's going to grab its friends and hug, and they're going to party, and you're going to lose a lot of material as water moves through the roadway and the base and the subbase. So I don't really want to say you've done a bad job. I'm saying that you've done a good job with what you were doing. Maybe we should alter a little bit. We don't have to. We could continue to look for large reconstruction projects. And that's kind of where I am. I like to lay out alternatives. I think Kayla did a pretty good job of doing that, is helping you identify 3 main ways. One way is just ignore it. You let gravity just pull your system down, and it will. Things will trend downward. The other one is we're going to try to tread water a little bit, and we're going to maintain it. And the other one is, hey, we're going to go higher than just maintain. We're going to to be overachievers and we're going to increase our index rating for our pavement. Do you want to ask a follow-up? I don't know if I've danced too much for you.
I think I might want to chime in on that. And again, Caleb, maybe you have a better sense of this too, but my impression so far is that communities really aren't using road use tax funds to do road projects. Basically, your road use tax fund dollars are more on the operational side of things. My understanding is the vast majority of this 2.75 million, I believe other communities are basically debt financing that. But that's something that would be a goal of us to further research on how these financing mechanisms are going. But generally, my understanding to this point is road use tax fund dollars are generally geared more towards operational expenses. These capital investments are usually debt financed.
And why I asked that too is the question, and so I think we would all agree, fill your cars up here so we get the RUDF money. But when the gas tax was increased in, what was it, like 2015, right around there, the goal was to improve our roadways, not our operations, in terms of funding all of our operations through RUDF. And that's kind of why I asked that question of, are we using our RUDF money in our best way possible? Because when the gas tax was increased at the state level, it was to fix roads. And looking at the street finance report, there wasn't a lot of RUDF money used on road repairs. And so that's why one of my categories for our goal setting was evaluating RUDF money. And so I saw your initials on there. I was like, all right. Because I just think we have to look at doing things differently everywhere, especially with what we're facing in general with, House File 718, more property tax reform, in the spirit of them increasing a tax to fix roads. We should probably figure out how to invest that money a little bit more in fixing our roadways, so.
I think there will be an increase in gas tax this year, not this year, next year, they're talking about that already. To your point, then maybe that's something we can look at as well, making sure that goes directly to what we need to use it for. To Eric's point, also into your options, we went into the South K Street project when we did asphalt, knowing full well that within probably 2 years, we would have to do some maintenance on that roadway. I mean, every one of the council members at that point in time knew that going in. So that has to be done, to Eric's point, I think, to make sure that we at least put a seal of some type over that and provide that opportunity to do that. Because if we don't, we're just making big mistakes, in my opinion, and we knew that, we were told that, everybody on the council understood that when that happened. I see your chart on the back here, I don't know what page 28, talking about the worst streets. A couple of questions, and I'm sorry, folks, if you got other questions, interrupt me here, but one of the things that I've kind of wondered about, Des Moines took Fleur Drive and they went from concrete to asphalt completely. Tore it all out, put in asphalt, right? So I'm wondering, and that's a major arterial. And I'm wondering, what if we should really strongly look at using more asphalt in not only our collectors and arterials, but if we should look at it in our local streets as well. I know, and again, going back to what I was told 30 years ago, when they presented the project for West Iowa, was that you need to maintain those, and it's not gonna last as long as concrete, but what we found there was, I think we well got our money's worth in that 20-some years it lasted. And so is it just a preference of the council? I mean, asphalt most generally is a lot less expensive.
I've seen it both ways. Even just this past year, I worked on a project where we did an alternate where we allowed asphalt or concrete, and concrete went out. I think Iowa is unique in its kind of reliance on concrete. I've asked that same question.
Yeah, they've been very, very vocal and very powerful to legislate.
Yes, so I don't know if you have anything.
I might just add, asphalt is good for what it's good for, if that makes sense, but putting it on top of a street that's already cracked, you'll see in the first couple of years, those cracks, it's called reflective cracking.
Yeah.
They just come straight up through, and that's not what it's intended for. If it is intended as a temporary measure, then you can do that. Now, you always can come back and take off. If you put, say, a 3-inch overlay down, you can come back in a very short order of time and take off the top inch and put an inch back. You get a nice sealed surface that is gonna look presentable. It's gonna buy you more time. It can fall into some of those rehabilitation strategies that can be, good uses of taxpayer dollars. But, I mean, there's other technologies out there, and I don't mean to say it fancy in technology, but just the concept of perpetual pavement where you can have concrete curb and gutters, full depth asphalt, and the city of Des Moines done that a lot. I know in some of their local roads that see low levels of traffic, and the idea there is full depth, those bottom probably 3 to 4 inches are never gonna see, like if you went and cored that, it would look as black as, when you
Yeah.
put it down. The top couple inches are gonna oxidize and they're gonna see some surface cracking. You can go in there with a program and mill off an inch, put back an inch, the residents are happy. You got a serviceable road for a long period of time.
So does it
And that
make,
can transfer up to the arterial level.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Does it make sense then for us, when we do have a street project, if, like, for instance, I think Willowcrest in the next couple of years, does it make sense for us to look at get bids on both, like concrete and asphalt, do a concrete curb and gutter and asphalt roadway? Does that make sense?
In my opinion, yes, and you let the market kind of drive what's in the best financial interest of the city at the time of the bid. Things fluctuate year to year, so.
I've kind of dominated here if anybody wants to ask questions.
I'm all for whatever Eric wants to do to fix my road, so.
Look, my husband's construction,
Yeah,
I
man.
don't tell him what to do with his job. I'm not gonna tell you. You tell me.
So I'm looking at this chart here on page 28. Does it make sense? So if I'm looking at this correctly, you've got reconstruction or major rehabilitation. Either one of those could be asphalt versus concrete. Is that what we're looking at, options? So then not only for new streets though, so then maybe in some of those streets that need reconstruction, we look at that option as well?
I think this is something we've come across, different communities have different tolerance levels for what they're willing to overlay.
Right.
And that's gonna be important and, an answer that I don't know if I could provide.
That goes to
It's-
his point to Eric, so there you go.
Yep. That's why we kind of create the toolbox of treatments to kind of lay out, what's possible. And then if you notice in those recommendations, we keep it at that, treatment category level. So, I don't want to go in and recommend a specific treatment,
Right.
because those are,
I understand that.
Yep, so, yeah.
But you've laid out a nice list of streets here that I think probably are the ones that you would recommend first, and
Yep, and again, these are heavily based on the software output. These are gonna change, there's gonna be a water main project come up, a sewer project that needs done, and so really this plan is meant to kind of flex over time. Some streets are gonna move up in the plan, some might need pushback, and so, really we call them kind of living documents, so.
well, one of the things that drives me absolutely crazy is to have a new street, concrete put in, or asphalt, and less than 6 months later, water or sewer or somebody else is coming in and tearing up the street. It drives me absolutely crazy. I mean, those things, to your point, need to be taken care of at the time. Which brings me to a point, I know East Franklin from North Sixth Street Place to 8th Street. I don't think it's on any of the things here, I think it's one of your worst streets, but that is having a water project, I believe, this next spring, but I'm thinking that's mostly in the right of way. That's probably a question for Eric where that water main's gonna be, so.
Yep.
They don't,
And it also goes down along North Seventh and around Seventh to Gerard's.
from my understanding, they don't plan on carrying out much of the.
Right, but it depends on where the water is. But that street is horrible. But it's just a local street, I get it.
My car would agree with a lot of these.
Yeah.
I have a question on the asphalt aspect of it and the equipment necessary. I don't believe we have the equipment. Is that correct?
Well, it's usually, you bid that out anyway. I mean, it would be, you'd have, if you're gonna go and do some, like on South K Street, I mean, that's gonna be a bid project, would be my guess, to put down some kind of seal or some kind of a topical on that over time. Is that right, Eric?
I think maybe to the question, we do some crack sealing in-house already, so we must have the equipment to perform crack sealing. As far as if we ever looked at doing a slurry seal, a chip seal of some sort, typically you would contract that out. So with a staff like ours, the division of labor is usually crack sealing can be an in-house activity, and then you get into the chip seal, slurry seal, overlays. Typically you bid those things out.
Probably pothole patching is in-house too, yeah.
Yep, those types of patching activities are in-house, yep.
So we would not be doing overlays.
Council, have any other questions? Great information, a lot of data here.
I know you said weeds, but I like weeds. I like weeds a lot, so thank you.
It's a good audience, so yeah, thank you guys, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that said, we are done, so thank you for your time. Thank you, folks. HR Green, thank you for the information.
Thank you.